Sunday, Ohio State looks to overcome the luck of the Irish as Notre Dame eyes the trophy.
I can't even contain myself.
SportsGrid has you covered for the national championship. Start with Coast to Coast at 3 p.m., followed by game time decisions for last-minute picks. And stick around for in-game live all night for real-time betting action. Stay tuned to SportsGrid, your home for championship coverage.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. It's championship night in college football. We'll have a full preview of Notre Dame and Ohio State coming up here on the show. What a weekend it was, though, in the National Football League. 3 out of the 4 games, compelling, exciting, right down to the wire. We'll recap all of them as well. We'll get Adam Caplan's thoughts here on the show, our SportsGrid insider. He'll join us here. And, of course, we'll check in with our guest contributors as well. Bill Bender from Sporting News getting you ready for the big game tonight in a very cold Atlanta, Georgia, by the way. Temperatures under 20 degrees today for this college football championship game. Cold around the country. I don't need to tell you that. That's the nature of the winter here in January. So let's get started here. Speaking of cold, Ravens, Bills yesterday. What an epic end of the game. One that you don't see all that very often. 27-25, the final score as the Buffalo Bills are headed to the AFC championship game. But did it come easy? No, it did not. The Bills led by 8 points going into the final drive. The Ravens score a late touchdown to pull within 2. Lamar Jackson throws a pass to Mark Andrews in the corner of the end zone, and Andrews dropped the ball. It will be one of those moments in infamy in the history of the NFL. Nothing to take away poorly from Lamar Jackson. Had a really good game, did fumble once. Clearly, the turnovers were the difference in the game for the Ravens. If you watch this game, it seemed to be the only reason why they lost this game. But Josh Allen, we'll start with him. Quarterback of the Buffalo Bills, talked about it coming down to that one play in the end that made the difference.
The ball out to Mark Andrews, recovered the fumble. That seemed to be the game's defining play.
Yeah, obviously understanding the flow of the game there and knowing that if we got points there, whether it was 3 or 6, it made it a full one-score game where they had to go for 2. That's why, like, on that 4th and 2, obviously we elected to kick, give us our defense a chance to go out there and play. And we made a play there at the end. I'm just so proud of our guys.
Your reaction now that you're headed to the AFC Championship game?
That's what we've worked for is an opportunity to play another week. We don't want our season to end on a loss, and this gives us an opportunity to keep going, but we'll enjoy this one. A lot to learn from this one. Obviously, wasn't pretty, but these playoff games, man, you got to win by 1. That's all that matters.
Sure seemed like defense and turnovers a big part of all the games this weekend in the NFL. John Harbaugh's Ravens, one of the best teams at not turning the ball over. But he talked about after the game doing it more than they fully expected going in.
We have not been a team that turns the ball over. I'm proud of our guys. We did a great job with that all year. We did turn it over this game, but you got to try to go make the next score and the next play, and that's what I judge it on. And we look at ball security, we look at all the details and the techniques and certain things like that, of course. But really, the mark is if you want to make a judgment, you want to make an evaluation. That's what you make it on. Okay, so what happens next? We come back, we fight, we go all the way down the field, and we score. I mean, that's the answer that our team makes. I'm concerned about our team, and that's the answer that our team made. That's why I'm so proud of these guys. That's why I told them I love them. I love them. I'm proud of them. I have nothing but admiration for them in every single way, and that's just how I feel about it.
The Ravens were a 1-point favorite. Of course, the Bills end up covering in a very close game. Meanwhile, so was the situation with the Eagles and Rams. If you bet that game early in the week or even the day before, the Eagles were 6-point favorites, but the line did climb 6.5, 7, 7.5, depending on how you bet. It really was the outcome of this one. 28-22. One with the story in this one, two different players. First, of course, was Saquon Barkley, who had a monster game, almost 200 yards rushing. But really the difference in the game were fumbles. The Rams turned the ball over a couple of different times, including Kyren Williams putting the ball on the ground. Weather was also an impact in this one, just like it was in Buffalo. Head coach Nick Sirianni talked about the snow factor in the game and Philly coming out on top.
Yeah, it affects it, especially as that as the field continues to gather snow. I think it neutralizes things. It has an effect on the game, and we were able to protect the ball, and we were able to force some turnovers, in the midst of it. We had some great individual efforts, and yeah, of course that plays a part of it, but everything plays a part of it, right? That's why we take advantage of when we can go outside, and be out there in the elements, and because every little thing matters, and the conditions got sloppy today, and we all had to play in it, and we found a way.
And the Eagles will host the NFC Championship game next Sunday at 3 o'clock Eastern. The Rams season for them comes to an end. Very emotional coach Sean McVay afterward getting really choked up about the fact that they had to go through so much to get to this point, including displacing all their families due to the wildfires.
Love this group, and I'm just really sad that this journey is over. This was a special season. It's as much fun as I've had, as much as you've ever wanted to do right for the people in that locker room. We've had a lot of special teams, but this team, there was something really special about them, and I think I'm up here pretty shocked because I know a lot of people didn't believe we could come in here, but we had the full expectation to come in here, and I don't think anybody ever really expected the end of the season to be right now, and the finality of it is tough for me to swallow because of the love and appreciation that I have for this group. But like I said, you give Philly credit. They did their thing, made enough plays, and obviously Saquon was excellent today, and I think the 2 turnovers were really costly. But I'm not going to make any excuses, and I'm proud of our team.
And Matthew Stafford, by the way, after the game said that he's not going to talk about his future playing in the NFL, but did say that he felt like he still had some more good football to play. Meanwhile, the biggest surprise of the weekend, unless you, of course, listen to me here on NewsWire, the Washington Commanders going to Detroit and not just covering, but winning the game outright. Washington is headed to the NFC Championship, 3 o'clock Eastern, 5.5-point underdogs. They will be that again when they take on the Philadelphia Eagles, but who's to say at this point they can't win it all? 45 points on the road at Detroit. A really impressive performance, one of the biggest upsets in divisional history, and unfortunately came at the expense of Dan Campbell, who was certainly emotional after the loss.
When you lose these games, man, it's like the players. What they put into it, a lot of people don't know, what they go through. You have to get up, bodies beat you, mentally stay locked in and do those things. So, long season. It's my fault. It's my fault.
Campbell in his press conference today, a lot more upbeat. So that's the good news. That just completed, by the way, in Detroit. Also, by the way, their offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, according to reports, will end up taking a job as a head coach in the NFL. We just don't know where. Apparently, according to reports, he's already informed the Lions that he will be leaving. Las Vegas is one of the rumors as a possibility. Most boring game of the weekend, I guess is probably fair. It was the first one. It was Texans and Chiefs. Look, I mean, the Texans played hard first half. In the end, 23-14 the final. Chiefs, no surprise here. They're headed to the AFC Championship game. That will be Sunday night. And if the Chiefs win, they'll be headed toward a third consecutive Super Bowl. All right, also in the NFL, let's get to injuries real quick. Sam Cosmi, their offensive lineman on Washington, he is going to miss the NFC Championship game at Philadelphia next week. Again, he has torn ACL. Quinyon Mitchell of the Eagles, their star cornerback, says he's optimistic about playing next week. And the Bears, by the way, going to interview former running back Eddie George for their head coaching position. We'll see who else gets interviewed for the Bears this week. Tonight, it is the big one, Notre Dame and Ohio State, where the Buckeyes are 8.5-point favorites, total of 45.5. We'll got full coverage for you tonight during the game, in-game live, 7:30 Eastern. Bill Bender will also preview that game for us as well. By the way, college football is ruled out, tweaking the 12-team format for 2025. They're going back and forth on this one as to whether or not teams will have byes and who will have byes and all that fun stuff. But that's a story for another day. Coming up next, we'll get into college football's national championship with Bill Bender from Sporting News. Don't go away.
Monday, Ohio State looks to overcome the luck of the Irish as Notre Dame eyes the trophy.
I can't even contain myself.
SportsGrid has you covered for the national championship. Start with Coast to Coast at 3 p.m., followed by game time decisions for last-minute picks. And stick around for in-game live all night for real-time betting action. Stay tuned to SportsGrid, your home for championship coverage.
This guy Ovechkin, how he was injured and missed all that time, and the fact that he's still on pace to pass Gretzky.
I think everybody's rooting for Ovechkin at this point in time, and I think he'll do it as well. So it's a feat that no one ever thought Scotty would be broken. It's going to be broken, and it's probably going to be broken because he's not going to stop shooting.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this once? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. As I mentioned, full coverage of tonight's college football national championship exclusively here on SportsGrid. Make sure you tune in to all of our programming, including In-Game Live and College Football Today. We've got you covered. Tonight, the game will begin around 7:30, 8 o'clock Eastern time, depending on when they kick this one off from Atlanta. As I mentioned, really cold temperatures right now in the South, especially in Atlanta, Georgia. You may remember several years ago, going back about 20 years, it was the coldest it was ever in Atlanta for the Super Bowl. This could be the case tonight again for the championship. Will not affect the game, of course. Ohio State, 8.5-point favorites against Notre Dame. Total 45.5. over on the FanDuel Sportsbook. If you are feeling frisky and you take Notre Dame on the money line, they are plus 310 tonight to win this game outright. There is some other college football news and notes to give to you here on the show before we get back into the game itself. So let's dive in. Now, in terms of the upcoming college football national championship and playoff format, it would seem a little ambitious to change a lot of the rules and the reasoning why they give teams byes in the first round. But as of right now, they haven't ruled out what they're calling some tweaks to the 12-team format for the upcoming next season. Sunday's annual meeting of the FBS commissioners and the presidents and chancellors who control the playoff, they were not expected to produce any immediate course of action, but it was the first time that they met to talk about the historic expanded bracket. There is some semblance to discussing as to whether or not the first round bye should essentially go to the best teams that are ranked in college football as opposed to some of the conference champions. As we saw, they had a really hard time in those early rounds in the college football playoff. They were not competitive. So we'll see if they end up making those changes. Also, the Atlantic Coast Conference is weighing changes to its college football championship game. This past season, SMU entered the regular season as the champions, but they lost because of their best record to Clemson in the title game, and they had to sweat out as to whether or not they would get in the 12-team field. So some tweaks coming to the ACC as well. Also for Texas, as they were eliminated in the last round, they were announcing yesterday that Steve Sarkisian has signed a 7-year contract extension with the University of Texas, and they are 38-7. He was 38-17 as a head coach before getting that extension. Meanwhile, let's go back to the college football national championship tonight. Ohio State lost to Michigan at the end of the season, and ever since then, they've looked like the best team in college football. Things have really turned around for them. Ryan Day, their head coach, was talked about potentially being someone that could even lose his job if the playoff did not go well. Well, there's no talk about that going on right now as Day previewed tonight's national championship against the Fighting Irish.
For us, has been about our players, our staff, our coaches. They're the ones who are on the field. They're the ones playing. And they're the ones, there's a bunch of guys that decided to forego an opportunity to go to the NFL or whatever it was, other schools, to come back, to have this opportunity to chase this goal. And right now, the focus is on finishing, the mission of winning the championship. But, anybody who's around our players and speaks to our players or interviews our players is quick to recognize, what a special group it is, how mature they are. I believe that being at Ohio State, you have to up your game across the board. And every day that you're there, every year that you're there, you just grow up faster, you learn faster, you have to hold yourself to a higher standard. The expectations are extremely high, and that's the way it is, and you embrace it. But this group has been through quite a bit of ups and downs and twists and turns along the way, and each individual player has their own story about where they're at right now, just like Coach Freeman was talking about. Each guy has their own journey, but then also as a group, they've had their own journey. Each class has had their own journey. The senior classes got a great story to tell. But like I've said before, those stories are not told unless you win it. And so that's our focus right now, is winning the game.
8.5-point favorites, depending on where you are betting the game. We'll see if that continues. Let's check in with Bill Bender from Sporting News. He's in Atlanta covering the game. And before we put Bill on the air, I see two things. It is the mark of a reporter who is covering the game, a credential and a coffee. That's the way that it goes on the way to the national championship game. Bill, thanks for coming on the show. Excited to watch this game tonight. I mean, odds makers are basically telling us it's not going to be a close game. Do you feel the same way?
I think turnovers will be key. If Notre Dame turns the ball over early, they're going to be in trouble. If Ohio State gets out to that quick start that they've had the first two games and jumps out to a 14-0 lead, could be a long night. That said, I like Ohio State in this game. Don't get me wrong. I think they just have too many questions. There are too many answers for Notre Dame's questions, with the injuries that Notre Dame has. I do think it's going to be a four-quarter game, though. And I've got it at 27-17 Ohio State. Craig, if Notre Dame doesn't get turnovers on that side of the field from Will Howard, it's just going to be too much for them. And that said, there's a lot of Notre Dame fans here. It's going to be a good atmosphere.
Yeah, let's check in on some of the player props tonight, Bill, before we let you go. I know you got to go to the game, busy day for you. Jeremiah Smith, who had such a quiet game in the last game on FanDuel, his over-under prop tonight is 79.5. Usually in all sports, Bill, the squeaky wheel usually gets the grease, right? And I think that there's a possibility of Smith doing that tonight. What do you think?
Yeah, and if they try to take him away, I like an even better one. I think Emeka Egbuka has a big game tonight. You look at his last 2 games against Notre Dame, he was around 90 yards. He scored in the first game in 2022. He's been consistent in this playoff. 5 receptions, about 70 yards in each game. Remember, he had the 42-yard touchdown against Oregon. He's my hidden key to this game because I do think they're going to try to take Jeremiah Smith away with Xavier Watts. And that's going to give favorable coverage to another guy that's going to play for the NFL for a while. So look for Emeka. I wouldn't be surprised if he scores the first touchdown, and I think I'm going to take a flyer on it.
All right, 55.5 for him. Let's look at Notre Dame's props real quick. And, Love, if he has one long run, then he'll go way over his rushing prop. But, Bill, that's sort of the deal here with him. He's a big hit-or-miss kind of guy.
Yeah, and Love and Price, in the last Ohio State game, 7 carries for 77 yards between the two of them. They'll get yards. And if Riley Leonard can get some yards up the middle, I think Notre Dame will have a chance. I like Love, especially with the 10 days of rest, to have a couple carries against this very tough Ohio State run defense. And Riley Leonard, if he can get to 200 passing yards, the Irish will have a chance. I just think that's a lot to ask for against this Ohio State defense, which is really, really good.
All right, Bill, thanks for spending time with us here on the show. Bring a jacket tonight. We'll catch up with you later in the week here on NewsWire. Thanks again.
Hey, no problem, Craig. Thanks for having me.
All right, Bill Bender, Sporting News. Coming up next, our SportsGrid insider Adam Caplan recaps the Rams and Eagles next.
Monday, Ohio State looks to overcome the luck of the Irish as Notre Dame eyes the trophy.
I can't even contain myself.
SportsGrid has you covered for the national championship. Start with Coast to Coast at 3 p.m., followed by game time decisions for last-minute picks. And stick around for in-game live all night for real-time betting action. Stay tuned to SportsGrid, your home for championship coverage.
This guy Ovechkin, how he was injured and missed all that time, and the fact that he's still on pace to pass Gretzky.
I think everybody's rooting for Ovechkin at this point in time, and I think he'll do it as well. So it's a feat that no one ever thought Scotty would be broken. It's going to be broken, and it's probably going to be broken because he's not going to stop shooting.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this once? Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. It's funny, as members of the media, as I am and Adam Caplan is, me on the side more of baseball these days than football, and Adam, of course, on the side of football for sure. You have rooting interests because of travel. And boy, did Adam Caplan get bailed out this week as he was watching that. We'll get into Washington, Detroit later for other reasons, but Adam's probably sitting back there going, "Are you kidding me? I got a chance to go to the NFC Championship this week? I didn't even have that in my bucket list." But Adam, the Eagles, they took care of business once it was determined that the Lions were out. Washington beat them. The Eagles now at the Link are going to play in an incredible atmosphere this coming Sunday at 3 o'clock Eastern, and a very good game, I thought, against the Rams.
Yeah, it was. They almost blew that game. You know what's interesting about the Eagles, Craig? The Eagles have not been on a plane since Week 12 when they traveled to visit the Rams, who they blew out in L.A. 37-20. It was a remarkable game. First of all, the weather, because we were talking yesterday on Pro Football Today about what the weather looked like. Because if you're like people like myself, I live south of the city. Well, it snowed 2 hours before the game. Whereas around Lincoln Financial Stadium that you mentioned, it got rain. So to start the game at 3 Eastern, although the field is heated underneath, there's coils, it was slick. You saw the opening kickoff, Isaiah Rodgers slip, who was the Eagles' kickoff returner and also backup corner. So throughout the first half, players were slipping. Then the snow came in middle of the second quarter and throughout the rest of the game, and that was a factor. What's comical is the game still went over, Craig, the total.
Yeah.
In fact, the total dropped from 45.5 to 43.5, but it went over the total. It was an amazing game, very intense. I know my friends are Eagle fans. Several of them said they had heart attacks during the game. Obviously not for real, but
Right.
they were on edge and nail biting. But it was Saquon Barkley is Superman right now. We do need to mention this for people who are, whether you're a fantasy player for the playoffs and prop numbers or you're putting money on the game, you got to understand the Eagles right now are beat up. Jalen Hurts hurt his left knee. Okay, he was phenomenal running the football. Had a couple of really good throws in that game. A.J. Brown dropped one down the right sideline. He should have had it. And then Devontae Smith got sandwiched between two defenders, and the Rams got called for a penalty. That was a great throw. That was a post route, which Smith should have caught, but he got hit. But the bottom line is Hurts is hurting with his left knee. A.J. Brown has had this bad left knee, Craig, for several weeks. And their passing game is not what it once was. They're winning with defense. Jalen Carter, number 98, right now is one of the best defensive players in the National Football League. He's been unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, Howie just keeps nailing all these picks. It's really crazy. You know, the other thing that I would add, Adam, before we move forward to anything else, and you follow sports betting like I do. It's funny that we mention these sort of things every year about the weather, and generally speaking, it's always overrated. Where we'll say, oh, the weather could be a factor, and once out of every 4 or 5 times, that's what it is. But from a handicapping perspective and the narratives of, hey, the weather can be a factor in this game and that game, Adam, I don't ever recall a divisional weekend where point blank it was a monster factor in all of the big games this weekend. And so, I don't know how you construct a team in this way necessarily, but it affected the Rams in a very big way. It affected the Ravens in a very big way. I just don't recall actually seeing this play out in the way that it did.
Well, first of all, and coaches have told me this for years, as long as it's not windy, you could throw in the rain. In fact, one of the best games I've ever seen in my life from a rain perspective was Rich Gannon a couple decades ago, who was with the Raiders at number 12. It was a Saturday game. I'm pretty certain it was a rare Saturday game. Maybe it was in December. And all they did is dink and dunk short passes in the rain, and he had a huge game. One of the best weather games I've ever seen. No, the coaches have told me for years, as long as it's not windy, you can throw. Now, it was moderately windy at the link yesterday. It wasn't too bad. Wasn't great conditions. But again, Matthew Stafford, the other reason why this game went over the total, they got far behind, and he had to have over 40 pass attempts, which really not what they want to do, but they did what they had to do. And the game went down to the wire, which I think the Eagles would tell you that's not what they were hoping would happen. But they escaped. They absolutely escaped and survived. And they'll host the Commanders and play them for the 3rd time this season.
Yeah, and depending on where you bet it, I saw a lot of people jumping up and down, for betting the Rams yesterday. But the truth be told is this line was opened at 5.5. If you bet that early, you won. Taking the Eagles, and 6 was a push for a lot of people during the week as well. All right, let's do this, Adam. Let's give you a quick break here. Got to bring in Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report. We'll chat with him, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the rest of the games in the NFL. Okay?
You got it. Thank you.
All right, Adam Caplan here with us. Coming up next, we talk about some potential sports betting changes going in Maryland. And also, is it possible that Mississippi will ever get online in their sports betting universe? We'll have that and a whole lot more. Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report joins us next on NewsWire. Don't go away.
Monday, Ohio State looks to overcome the luck of the Irish as Notre Dame eyes the trophy.
I can't even contain myself.
SportsGrid has you covered for the national championship. Start with Coast to Coast at 3 p.m., followed by game time decisions for last-minute picks. And stick around for in-game live all night for real-time betting action. Stay tuned to SportsGrid, your home for championship coverage.
This guy Ovechkin, how he was injured and missed all that time, and the fact that he's still on pace to pass Gretzky.
I think everybody's rooting for Ovechkin at this point in time. And I think he'll do it as well. So it's a feat that no one ever thought Scotty would be broken. It's going to be broken, and it's probably going to be broken because, he's not going to stop shooting.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We got Pat Evans with us from Legal Sports Report. Today, of course, Inauguration Day. Pretty soon we're going to have new bills being proposed. That's coming up next month. So a lot of changes going on in sports betting and plenty to talk about here on the show as we bring Pat in. Pat, thanks for coming on the show. Well, one of the bigger changes that I know that you guys wrote about over at Legal Sports Report shouldn't be a surprise, and I think that this is a trend to watch in 2025. Maryland, oh my gosh, are we surprised, wants to raise their tax rate 15%. What they got.
Yeah.
They're asking for 30, a doubling the tax rate. Is this going to pass?
Yeah, who knows at this point? But yeah, this is something, the industry's been kind of worried about the last 2 years since New York passed their, legalized at 51% tax rate. The industry's been like, oh man, this could be bad for us in other states when they see what New York's bringing in. Because for the most part, states legalize sports betting at a nice, reasonable amount that the industry had liked and worked with legislators to propose, somewhere around the likes of under 20%, whether it's, 15% in a lot of states, including Maryland or others. But since then, we've seen a lot of bills come in, including this year in Michigan and Louisiana. But in Maryland, we're seeing the governor come out and in his proposed budget include doubling the tax rate, to your point, from 15% to 30%. And this is something we've seen in other states in the past, including Illinois last year. They went from 15% to a tiered system based on revenue from 20% to 40%. So the more you make, the more you get taxed. The year before that, just shortly after it launched, Ohio's Governor Mike DeWine put in his budget another doubling from 10% to 20%. So they're still reasonable. But both of those passed the legislator when they went through the budget. And this is kind of where you look at Maryland, similar to how we've talked about Illinois' online casino proposal this year in the budget, which J.B. Pritzker did. Wes Moore is facing a $3 billion deficit in Maryland. So from that, you see this tax rate and say, maybe we do need to up it to get some more revenue from this tool that they instituted mostly to gain more tax revenue. So that's where you're looking at Maryland. Does it pass? We're going to see. This is kind of, it has to go through the whole entire legislative process, get passed from the House, get passed from the Senate. There's going to be lots of talking about it. Who knows if they actually bring this up? This could be one of the things that gets put in the budget that just kind of slips through and isn't even really talked about. What also is interesting with that $3 billion deficit is there more of an appetite for the online casino bill that we've seen introduced in Maryland, which of course last year passed the House, fell kind of on deaf ears in the Senate? Could this $3 billion deficit and this tax rate hike say, hey, maybe this gambling is a way to bring in more revenue? Let's do this because we have a lot of money to make up in Maryland. So yeah, the tax rate, who knows, could be something that slips through. And then also it could have implications on the online casino bill there in Maryland as well.
Yeah. Speaking of online casinos, finally, we're getting a new sports betting bill in Mississippi, a topic we've talked about a number of times here on the show. As sports betting has been legal in Mississippi for many years, one of the first states to legalize sports betting and actually put it into action. Now they're trying to get it online. It's the same conversation we've had for several years, Pat. It's like I close my eyes and I picture like Robert De Niro in Casino, like walking through and getting these people on the phone saying, nope, we don't want it. Nope, we don't want it. No. I mean, because in the end, the casinos are going to potentially be hurt by having online betting, because then you don't actually have to go to the Beau Rivage or anywhere else to bet on sports. And look, I don't have any information that is actually accurate, that these casinos are going to be blocking it, Pat. But if I had to guess, that's my conspiracy theory, is that the casinos themselves, they don't stand to benefit from this.
Yeah, and that's really where it comes down to. I mean, it did pass back in 2018 to have in-person sports books at the casinos. In 2018, that's one of the first states to legalize. And since then, the lawmakers have been trying to, or at least some lawmakers have been trying to introduce online casino and take it statewide. And yeah, the appetite from a lot of the casinos in Mississippi are not there. Of course, the big operators, the Caesars, the MGMs of the world, they're fine with it. They want online casino, and that's where a lot of this kind of back and forth is. And to your point, the locally owned smaller companies that are fearful of the competition and cannibalization of that in-person casino revenue are saying to their local legislators, no, don't pass this. We don't want this. We want to keep all the money in our sports books in person. And so that's what you're fighting. This year was kind of a give and go of, is this going to happen? Another attempt to go online. The Senate chair of the gaming commission gaming committee came out and said, unless the Mississippi Gaming Commission tells me to put in a bill to go online, I'm not going to do it. And the gaming commission said, well, we don't say whether or not to do bills. So the Senate was kind of just not going to do anything. We do have a House bill that was introduced at the beginning of the session to take it online. That will be heard in the House Gaming Committee. So it could pass the House. Does it pass the Senate? If it passes the House, again, it's all the legislative process. That's why I watch it, so everybody that listens here or reads LSR can find out what's happening. It hasn't passed since 2018, as we've seen over and over again. This online expansion bill try to get through. Is 2025 any different? Who knows? I mean, we look at the Southeast and what's happening. Alabama's been trying for years to pass just a lottery bill, and they can't. Yep. Georgia's been trying to pass sports betting for years, can't. So the Southeast you've got that little population of adamantly morally against casino. So I think even though Mississippi has a great gambling culture with all their riverboat casinos, I don't know if the online expansion can garner enough momentum and to break through that this year. So we're going to watch it carefully and let you know as it develops, Craig.
Yeah, I'd bet against that. Speaking of which, betting against it every year would have worked. But speaking of riverboat gambling, is there a chance that Indiana could be the next state to have that going here? I know that there's a new House bill that's been filed to try to push this through.
Yeah, Indiana is such an interesting case in this online casino expansion world. They were long considered one of the best candidates to be one of the first online casino states. I mean, at least trailing the first couple. We've got 7 online casino states, at least in that next round afterwards. And then we've had this little conspiracy situation that, last year or in 2023, Representative Sean Eberhardt pleaded guilty to a conspiracy to commit, kind of a fraud situation. He said he would try to make things easier on a casino company in exchange for a future job. Well, that got caught. He pleaded guilty. Then in 2023, heading into the 2024 session, Senate leadership said, whoa, we're not going to handle any gambling issues. this is bad. The public has probably lost trust in us to handle this issue. So last year, there was really no talk about anything. You know, the industry said, we're going to go hands off on Indiana for a little bit because, yeah, this is not a great situation. We don't want any funny business going on. We want to be above board and make sure everything's legitimate and well, you know, documented and all that jazz. Well, now another year removed, we've got a new bill to take casino online in Indiana. Again, kind of, we're just going to have to watch because, you know, while 4 years ago, this might have been a better case scenario with a lot of momentum from other legalization of online casino. Now, again, as I've said multiple times coming on here, there's lots of headwinds against online gambling. So who knows, you know, what kind of legislators are going to heed that and say, well, we're not going to touch this for another couple of years still and let everything kind of shake out. So, hey, at least it's back on the discussion board in Indiana. Right. Does it make any moves? We'll watch and carefully and keep you updated, Craig, but I'm not exactly hopeful that that gets anything done this year.
All right. Great stuff, Pat. As always here on the show. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'm sure we'll catch up soon. Thanks for coming on NewsWire.
And thanks as always, Craig. Talk to you soon.
All right, Pat Evans with us here on Legal Sports Report. Just a reminder, you can catch all of our coverage of the College Football National Championship game tonight. We've got great in-game live programming. Ohio State taking on Notre Dame. What a crazy weekend of football, Saturday, Sunday, and it all is done tonight. We'll crown a new college football champion in this first 12-team playoff. Make sure you catch all the coverage here on SportsGrid coming up at 6, 7 o'clock Eastern. All right, Adam Caplan rejoins us for the rest of the NFL recap next.
Monday, Ohio State looks to overcome the luck of the Irish as Notre Dame eyes the trophy.
I can't even contain myself.
SportsGrid has you covered for the national championship. Start with Coast to Coast at 3 p.m., followed by game time decisions for last-minute picks. And stick around for in-game live all night for real-time betting action. Stay tuned to SportsGrid, your home for championship coverage.
This guy Ovechkin, how he was injured and missed all that time, and the fact that he's still on pace to pass Gretzky.
I think everybody's rooting for Ovechkin at this point in time, and I think he'll do it as well. So it's a feat that no one ever thought Scotty would be broken. It's going to be broken, and it's probably going to be broken because Scotty, you know, he's not going to stop shooting.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this once? Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Craig Mish joined by Adam Caplan here. Let's go through some of the more compelling NFL games this weekend. Boy, was I ecstatic to see what played out on Saturday night. Washington goes into Detroit and is one step away from a dinner with Adam Caplan. I got one more game to go here to make this happen.
That's right. I forgot.
Adam, Washington... Washington, look, is a team just like a lot of other teams in the NFL. You get to the 4. There's one surprise. This year it is the Commanders. And look, they're on the doorstep of the Super Bowl here. I mean, they're 5.5-point underdogs. I'm going to acknowledge very clearly that I don't think Washington's beating Philly by 14 this weekend. I don't think that that's going to happen. The Lions' defense was awful in this game. Goff made a bunch of mistakes. Philadelphia's defense is much better than Detroit. So I do anticipate a closer game, but it happens every year, Adam. It's like we forget this every year that some surprise team jumps in. It was Cincinnati a few years ago. This year, it's the Commanders.
Yeah, look, when you have elite quarterback playing, Jaden Daniels is playing at an elite level, you have a chance at anything. It's kind of like a goalie in hockey. Let's say a goalie stands on his head, he can carry a team that's probably not expected to be there. That's what's happening here with Washington. If you really graded their roster, you'd say, okay, that maybe they're a 9-win team, 10-win team, but they've been much better than that because of the quarterback play. Coaching, by the way, Dan Quinn and his staff have done a great job, and they're well ahead of schedule. And I'll be honest with you, after Jaden Daniels threw 5 touchdown passes against the Eagles in, it was like week 16, anything is possible. And by the way, the early forecast, I know it's early.
Yeah.
It's very early in the week. 40 degrees and no snow, no precip. I know you and I talked the last segment, don't overrate the weather, but that's a good sign. And I give Washington a real shot. Now, that I know that number opened at 4.5. I guess it could go to 5.5 as of right now at other books. But the bottom line is that is a tempting number. If that thing gets up to 6, or because to me the hype's going to be on Philly because they're the home team. As you just said, nobody thinks Washington can win that game. I don't agree with that. Washington has shocked me when you're as confident as they are, and they beat the heck out of the Lions. They're the road warriors here. They've already done on the road twice already. Let's not forget about that.
Yeah, and on top of it, the NFC is just proving to be not nearly as good as the AFC. My concern would be whoever gets to the Super Bowl is going to be at least a 3-point dog, I think, going in. Right now, that's the current line there. All right, so we mentioned Daniels. He had the huge game, 2 touchdowns, 299 passing yards, 16 rushes for 51 yards. They're calling him maybe the best rookie ever in his first year in the history of the NFL at quarterback. I don't know if that's a stretch or not, but we'll touch on that later in the week. We only have limited time, so let's go to the next recap here. We'll do the Ravens and Bills, which was an epic finish, no question about it. Truly amazing to see every team that outgained the other lose, and this was the case again. Baltimore falls to Buffalo 27-25. The Bills did just enough to win this one. It all came down to the end. A heartbreaking moment for Mark Andrews. 2 heartbreaking moments, actually, for Mark Andrews, which is what more people are talking about today. It's almost like, Adam, the 86 World Series with Buckner all over again. I kind of felt that moment there.
Well, it didn't go through his legs. It went through his hands. But, yes, I get that one. Totally, if you're old enough to remember the late Bill Buckner for the Red Sox against the Mets in that 86 World Series. But this thing with Baltimore, they have to look at and say they clearly outplayed them. When I picked Buffalo on Thursday with Pharrell, it was such a tough call. I did it more because it was revenge for Buffalo. Buffalo got blown out earlier this season. But it was one of these things. You're watching this game, and you're like, wow, boy, Buffalo's not playing great. If Baltimore doesn't stop turning it over, they got a chance here. If they could just stop turning it over, and they couldn't, they lost the turnover battle. By the way, going back about 40 to 50 years, Craig, if you lose a turnover battle, you lose 90% of your games. That's just the way it is. And they lost it. Actually, it's 2 or more is that number, I'm told. It's actually 2 or more. And look, the Lions can overcome it. And poor Lamar Jackson. I had to vote for him. I voted for Pro Football Writers Association on Wednesday night. It was the deadline to vote, and you got to look at the entire season. A lot of us have recency bias. Yes, Josh Allen had an unbelievable second half for the ages.
He did.
But if you look at the totality of the regular season only, Lamar's got to get it, and I voted for him. But man, playoffs, he just cannot get the job done. It's a shame.
Yeah, and look, I don't know that this was on him on this one, but certainly you could question a lot of different things. But Buffalo moves on. They are a 1.5-point dog at Kansas City. And look, Adam, the narrative has already been built, and it continues to be built, which is just not true. If you go back and look through the years, the Chiefs are not on the winning end of these penalties that keep getting called for them, but it's just really hard to not watch these games and think, sometimes it feels like the Chiefs are benefiting from the calls. I mean, the data shows the opposite here, but that would be my fear taking the Bills going into Sunday night. I've just got to keep it real here that there could be one call in the game that doesn't go the way that you think it should. But I mean, I genuinely am not a conspiracy theorist. I think it'd be great to see Buffalo in the Super Bowl. Who would be against that? But the Chiefs certainly keep finding these ways every single week to win, and a bad call was definitely part of that this week.
Look, Willie, I understand that play in the first half. But see, the problem is they made an adjustment to the lowering the head rule. Watching it at home and knowing the rules I do and talking to the NFL about it, it should not be a penalty, okay? Because there's nothing Will Anderson could have done there. The competition committee, and they vote in March for rule changes and so forth. They've got to take a hard look at this. Because think about it. You could lose a game with a very questionable call on the line. You can't have that. I know what you're alluding to. You don't want that you don't want a game to come down to a call like that. That's just not right. And then the flailing of the arms and the acting by Mahomes. You can't this can't happen. But yeah, and they're at home. And I know you're alluding to that because they're the home team here. The Bills, they're good against the Chiefs in the regular season, but not in the postseason. And that's a concern going into Kansas City, where right now the early call is very cold, but right now no snow. I would say that it should be 1.5 or 2. I would agree with that. And the Chiefs move on, but man, there's a thing called quarterback wins. Mahomes isn't playing great football, but their defense is dominant with Steve Spagnuolo, their defensive coordinator. George Karlaftis, by the way, we don't talk about him enough at defensive end. He had 5 sacks this season against the Texans. He had a great game on Saturday.
He did. These odds really make no sense on FanDuel, Adam, if you take a quick look at it. The Eagles are favored right now to win the Super Bowl, but I can guarantee you if the Eagles beat Washington, they're going to be dogs in the Super Bowl against KC or Buffalo, no?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I would have them about a 2 or 3 point dog. I would agree with that.
Yeah, weird odds on FanDuel. All right, Adam, we'll catch up later in the week. Thanks again.
Yeah.
Monday, Ohio State looks to overcome the luck of the Irish as Notre Dame eyes the trophy.
I can't even contain myself.
SportsGrid has you covered for the national championship. Start with Coast to Coast at 3 p.m., followed by game time decisions for last-minute picks. And stick around for in-game live all night for real-time betting action. Stay tuned to SportsGrid, your home for championship coverage.
This guy Ovechkin, how he was injured and missed all that time, and the fact that he's still on pace to pass Gretzky.
I think everybody's rooting for Ovechkin at this point in time, and I think he'll do it as well. So it's a feat that no one ever thought Scotty would be broken. It's going to be broken, and it's probably going to be broken because he's not going to stop shooting.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. One more reminder, folks. Tonight, it's for all the marbles in college football. We've got the championship tonight. Ohio State takes on Notre Dame. I know this has kind of been like a little under the radar over the weekend because the NFL games have been so wild. But truth be told, hopefully we're in for a really good matchup tonight. We'll have it covered for you in-game live, all kinds of great programming, prop programming, everything for you tonight. All right, let's wrap up the show with some fun with A.J. Brown again, who is definitely in the news. Also a rock singer performing very well at a fencing contest. Didn't think we would be doing this one. And also, if we talked about last week here on the show, if you don't have something to get signed, what do you do? Would you bring a book? Do you do something else? One fan had an interesting take on that. Let's get to some last licks. Yeah, we'll start with that one. So you remember last week we told you about a fan who was in the airport and saw Paul Skeens there. Do you remember this? Paul Skeens for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He had nothing to get Paul signed. Like, he had nothing for him to autograph, so he took a picture with him. And then he gave him a book of Crime and Punishment, the old book, and Skeens signed one of the pages of the book. Well, here's something that happened in an NBA game. It just so happened when we ask ourselves the question, if we have nothing to get signed, what do we do? Well, one fan decided that he would have his baby get signed, literally his child get autographed. And that's what happened here at an NBA game. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of the Oklahoma City Thunder was asked to sign a baby at a game, and he obliged. It looks like, from what I saw in the video, that the fan lifted his baby over one of the seats, lifted up the shirt, and then SGA signed the baby's back. Don't know what possibly could come out of that would be beneficial, other than me or somebody else talking about this on the show. We have seen fans get their arms signed and legs, things like that, and then they get like a tattoo of it. We've seen that before. Not that I've ever gotten a tattoo. But what in the world here? What are we doing? Like, why not give the baby shirt or just anything else as a memento? This thing, you're going to be washing a Sharpie off a baby later in the day. But needless to say, SGA obliged. Seems like a pretty good dude, signs autographs before the games, things like that. All right, last week it was all about A.J. Brown on the sidelines reading a book for the Philadelphia Eagles, Inner Excellence. This week it was all about A.J. Brown showing up to the game in style. His outfit, very nice, maybe a couple $100,000. But why was A.J. Brown driving a Honda? That is what everybody's asking. A very highly paid player in the NFL seems to be pretty grounded, driving a Honda Accord to the game yesterday at the Link before they ended up taking out the Los Angeles Rams. So either one of two things is happening here with A.J. Brown. Either A.J. Brown is a really good troll, as they say, because he's found a way to be in the spotlight the last couple of weeks that has nothing to do with his play on the field, or he genuinely is one of the most interesting men in the National Football League. I don't know which way I weigh in on this. Is A.J. Brown just genuinely that interesting, or does he know we're all watching him and he's taking out books and driving Hondas to the football game? I'm not really sure. All right, we wrap it up with Iron Maiden. You know that hard rock band Iron Maiden through the years? A very popular band here in the United States and abroad. The lead singer's name is Bruce Dickinson. Well, he competed this weekend in a fencing tournament. And by the way, Bruce Dickinson is not 30, 40, or even 50 years old, folks. He competed in a circuit fencing championship in a tournament and actually finished in the top 15. How about that? Good for him. Haven't heard a lot of Iron Maiden in the news in the last 10, 20 years. Kind of a band from the 70s and 80s, maybe even the 90s as well. But how about this? One of the band members and popular band members ends up doing very well at a fencing tournament. As you can see there, he even had his name on the back there in the tournament, finished 13th overall. So congrats to him as well. Good job there. Good place to end the show here today. 66? Wow, 66 years old, still doing it. These rock singers, they go into their 60s and 70s. They perform on stage. They kind of have to be athletic. It's really true. You see a lot of them still performing. Rolling Stones, Aerosmith, all of them too. All right, that'll do it for the show today. Thanks again to Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report, also Bill Bender from Sporting News, and also Adam Caplan, our SportsGrid insider. Thanks again to our director, Luke, and my producer, Frank. I'm Craig Mish. All right, so enjoy the rest of your day here, folks. We got a great day ahead of you here. Of course, Pharrell Coast to Coast, 3 o'clock. He'll recap everything in the NFL and get you ready for the college football game tonight. But this is your one-stop shop for sports betting, handicapping, and everything else. The SportsGrid app, just take out your phone, scan the QR code. It'll tell you more about all of the shows that are going on here on SportsGrid 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and also give you some tips and the inside edge against the spread. So enjoy your college football championship tonight. We'll crown the winner, and then we'll talk about it tomorrow on our next edition of NewsWire. Enjoy your Monday night championship. I will see you then. Have a great day, everyone.